Islam or jizya or to be killed. And I want to ask him one single question. If there is a nation that came with powerful nation and declared war on him as a Muslim and said to him, you either convert to Christianity or you pay us humiliating tax, jizya, or we will kill you. Will he consider this a sort of teaching that he will respect it, or he will feel that this is something unacceptable? So I believe there are certain things in Islam, like killing apostate and beating women and stoning women. I'm not saying there is a difference between punishing here between man and woman. I'm saying that this teaching existed. I don't care if you are unfair with both of them, if you are still unfair. So the issue here is that if he is willing to accept other people coming to him and putting a sword over his neck, telling him you either convert to our religion or pay us money or we will kill you, does he consider this a sort of peaceful teaching or a sort of teaching that he expects people to look up and respect it?
Okay, I will turn it to him, but can you just quickly give us a verse on where it says about stoning women for our audience who might not know?
There is no verse in the Quran about stoning women because it's not in the Quran. It actually contradicts the Quran. But the problem comes from the non-Quranic sources of the religion, or at least...
Where can we find that? Where can we find that?
It's a hadith in Al-Bukhari that women must be stoned to death. Not women, actually men and women. And I said women just because it's commonly practiced, but in general, the hadith did not distinguish, but at the end, there is a stoning process that people who want to implement the Sharia want to implement it based on the hadith, not in the Quran.
Okay.
The Quran never mentioned the stoning. In fact, the Quran contradicts the stoning because the punishment for slave girls back then, during the early stage of Islam, was half of the punishment free women. So you cannot divide stoning to death into half. You can divide lashes, 100, you make it 50. So it's the issue here is hiding facts doesn't work. The stoning is there. Iran practice it, Saudi Arabia practice it, and Afghanistan, Taliban practiced it. And I wish to hear from him clearly, is the stoning of human beings, not just women, acceptable for making adultery or not?
Okay, I'll turn it to Anjem. Let's get your 2 cents in here, Waleed, real quick, and then we'll go to Anjem.
Okay, the question is, can Islam be reformed? I mean, the side issue of stoning or non-stoning, to me, is a mute topic because Islam still has punishments. There is qisas in Islam to punish adultery, az-zani wa zaniya. If they're married, they both get killed. If they're unmarried, they get 100 lashes. I agree with Brother Anjem that it is equal between men and women as far as the punishment for adultery. But the question here is Islamic reformation. Let's stay on the topic. When we talk about Islamic reformation, can Islam be reformed? I mean, we had the Cold War. When we had the Cold War, did the United States of America per se say, well, let's reform communism, or let's apply democracy to communism? To apply democracy to communism will be communistic capitalism, applying capitalism to communism. It becomes an oxymoron to say that we can apply capitalism to communism. There's no such thing. When Christendom had its problems in history, we had a Christian Reformation. But how did we apply Reformation? We applied Reformation by first going back to the Bible, going back to the Christian heritage, going back to the biblical concepts in order to apply Reformation. Brother Anjem is a reformer from his own perspective. He is going back to the Quran, back to the Sunnah, back to the Hadith, back to the ulama. Islam is very clear. أطيعوا الله والرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. You must obey Allah and the Prophet and the jurisprudence from amongst you. All 4 schools of thoughts, whether you look at Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki, and the other, they all taught the same concepts, very similar concepts when it comes to treatment of minorities, the rights of women, marriage, divorce, inheritance. للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. For the male has twice what the female inherits. It takes 2 witnesses in a court of law if they are women. to basically equal the same testimony of a man. Those kind of concepts you cannot reform. There's only two choices. We either can defeat the war with Islam, defeat Islam as a whole and concept and in war as well, or they defeat us. There is no other choice. We've had the same thing with Nazism. We've had the same thing with communism. So I think it's a moot point to argue back and forth whether these verses existed regarding stoning or not, because that's not the issue. The issue is Sharia.
Okay, well, let's turn it to Anjem. Anjem, your comments?
Yes, I think it's very healthy that we can now take our gloves off and we can actually speak from our own hearts. Because I do believe, as a Muslim, in the concept of Izharuddin, the domination of the whole world by Islam. And I believe that when and if we establish the Sharia, which I hope will be very soon, and that is what we've been promised that it will come definitely, we will launch jihad, mubada'a, as a foreign policy to remove all obstacles in the way of establishing the Sharia outside of the frontiers of the Islamic State, until one day the whole world will be governed by the Sharia. Now, when you talk about the rights, I don't accept human rights. I don't accept the United Nations. I don't accept freedom and democracy or secularism or any other of the false notions and the corrupted ideas that are being propagated by your other guests. I freely admit that. I believe that they should all be confined to the dustbin of history. And they are all inferior, in fact, to Islam. I believe in the principle of al-Islamu ya'lu wa la yu'la alayh. Islam is superior and will never be surpassed. You cannot compare the man-made laws and human rights to the divine laws that we have under the Sharia. You know, wherever we look, from the rights of women to the rights of the fetus to the rights of individuals, you know, when you look at the Human Rights Act, for example, you know, there is no right for the fetus. A person may be born, you know, relatively free, but you can abort him even before he reaches this, reaches the open world, because there is no protection for the unborn child. Whereas in Islam, the unborn child can inherit and is protected and has a right of lineage. Even the women in Islam,
can you touch base on the issue of the stoning of women, just as an example? We're not going to get sidetracked, but you talk about women's rights. Can you address that in Islam?
Yes, of course. I mean, the women, you see, the women in Islam are treated as mothers, as daughters, as sisters and aunts. You know, they have the full right of participation within society. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he used to consult the people, he would consult the men and women.
Dr. Hamid just was giving the example of the stoning of not necessarily a woman, but any human being in general. He's saying that's counter to human rights. What do you say about that? You don't feel that needs to be reformed in Islam?
No, I believe that both the man and the woman, if they commit adultery and they're married, should be stoned to death if there are sufficient witnesses. Obviously, there are 4 witnesses, or there's self-confession. You know, this is something that will definitely take place. And if you are punished in this life, that will prevent you from being punished for that crime in the hereafter. This is what we've been informed. So it's much better for them to have the punishment in this life and to save themselves in the hereafter, because the real life obviously is not in this life but the one to come. So this is something that we've been told by the final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for your information, you know, the women are not punished, and the man is allowed to go free. And I'm sure that your guests as well, they will say, oh, the woman's testimony is half of that of man. But I can give you at least 9 cases where the woman's testimony is more than that of a man. For example, on the issue of breastfeeding, on the issue of...
Okay, we have to stay on topic. I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Hamid. But when you say that you hope to see that for jihad to be performed, to dominate, to have Islam dominate in the world, are you talking about violent jihad? Anjem?
Yes, of course. Are you talking to me?
Yes. Were you referring to the violent jihad to spread Islam globally?
I am referring to jihad, which will remove all frontiers and all boundaries or all obstacles in the way of implementing the Sharia. But we are talking now about regimes. Let me tell you quite clearly, when you look at some of the regimes, for example, the Chinese regime or the American regime or, the Indian regime, who are oppressing their people, they're not providing the basic needs of food, clothing and shelter, they don't protect the life and the honor of the people. People, have animalistic behavior. They're following their own desires. For these people, it will be a great mercy from Allah to be liberated from the shackles of man-made law, to be liberated from the hegemony of man-made law, and to come into the beauty and the light and justice of Islam. So this is doing them a big, big favor. You know, the Islam is a mercy for mankind when implemented. So we are taking them away from oppression and into justice. And I think that if we can use force to do that, then that is a force for good. You know, you can use force for evil or for good.
Let me turn it to Dr. Hamid to comment on that man-made law and free from oppression. What do you have to say about that?
I believe when you come to someone and say to him, you either convert or you pay me money or I will kill you, no sane individual can consider this freeing from oppression. It is the real definition of oppression. When you come to me, put a sword over my neck, and I think the whole concept of using words that women rights without addressing the specific issues, like beating women, for example, what sort of bad beliefs in how he sees human rights when they respect women and they don't allow men to beat women, for example. And on the contrary, Sharia allows men to beat women. So how he sees this, is it something that he considers acceptable and something that he considered that Islam respected women when he accepts some sort of this teaching? So I feel that it's better to go and talk about or speak about specific issues rather than just general issues. And it's so easy to say that Islam is the religion of peace. It is so easy to say Islam gave women their rights, but let us talk about the specifics, like something like beating women, that is justifiable in the Islamic Sharia laws. And thank God Western countries stopped beating women and considered it a crime. And I wish to see this happening in the Islam. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, I would like to convey a clear message here that talking big words that Islam respects women and respects this and that without confronting this reality that the current Sharia teaching need to be changed. For example, when you have a concept of declaring wars to spread the religion, and if you don't reform this concept, if you don't look to the verses in a different way, then we are truly in trouble. And I would like to mention something related to my brother Walid Shubat here, that when he said the world need to confront Islam as it confronted communism before, I would like to clarify one point. Communism was just a political system and Nazism was also a political system. It's a completely different case from religion. Religion is generally processed to a great extent at the subconscious level. So people are emotionally related to it. So I haven't seen a single religion that disappeared from the world, for example. So when he speaks about reform, he is against reformation, and he says the world has to confront it. It would be great if he can give us a specific mechanism whereby 1.5 billion people will change completely from Islam to another belief. How this can happen? It's important for him to give us a mechanism how he sees this happening. This is number one. Number two, I myself had experience with one verse that says that kill the infidels wherever you find them. And I was actually radicalized partially because of this verse. اقتلوا المشركين حيث وجدتموهم. But later on I realized that the use of the suffix al or the before the word infidels can limit the meaning in space and time in this stage of history. Like if I told you I'm going tomorrow to a White House, it's different from going tomorrow to the White House. That can make a lot of a difference in understanding the meaning. This is just an example of the violent verses. So we don't deny that, we cannot deny that there are verses that can, if it's taken literally, it creates a lot of violence. I cannot deny this. However, looking to these verses from a different angle is vital and fundamental, because without giving a mechanism by which the Muslim world can change, I believe just saying, confronting it like communism, which was a political ideology, it was not a religion. That's a completely different case.
Okay, Walid, final comments for about a minute, and then we'll take a break.
I would love to. He asked the question about how do we confront 1.5 billion Muslims. Communism is a political system, and Islam is a religion. But of course, Islam is not just simply religion. Al-Islamu dinun wa dawla. Islam is a religion and a constitution as well. It's an entire way of life for the entire world as a law as well. And how can we do it? Well, we've done it in the past. Christendom had a war with Islamdom for hundreds of years. Eventually, the West defeated the Islamic world. The Ottoman Empire was dismantled.